Everybody's
Not only did some jokes, we had to go out on the weekends with our friends. We were just destroyed. What? Trying to, you're going out and you're like 9 o'clock and you're just falling asleep.
Yeah, hang on. I have this one.
Yeah, I think she has the one that goes with that.
All right, then what's this?
There was one that was left here. We don't know. I was like, oh, that's just a Friday.
Is that mine, maybe?
All right, good evening and welcome to the Thursday, March 16th, 2023 Scarborough School Board of Education workshop. Diane, can we please call the attendance?
Sure. Mrs. Gammon.
Here.
Mr. Kelleher.
Here.
Miss Leong.
Here.
Mrs. Lindstrom.
Here.
Mr. Marino.
Here.
Ms. Tarpinian.
Here.
Mr. Peony Huff. Here. Miss Bertulia.
She's been excused.
And Mr. Shumway.
He's been excused. All right, can everybody please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Agenda item 4.0 is the workshop. 4.1 is social emotional learning. So at this point, I will turn it over to Monique and Stacy. Along with the else.
Did anybody else?
You give them all.
Oh, all of them? They're all the
This-
same?
That's the packet.
Packet of things.
Do I have two?
Thank you so much. I know you've got a whole bunch of stuff. A whole packet of materials. I thought it might be helpful. On the top is the set of slides if you want to take some notes. To give you the kind of key information, we're going to be going over a lot, and there are a number of links in the presentation. I thought it might be helpful if you could just have the opportunity to walk away with the materials, take a look at those, and then be more than happy to come back and do another board workshop, or we can follow up during the school board curriculum committee meetings if there are more questions. So I'd like to begin by introducing my colleague, Stacy Canappa. She is our K through 12 SEL specialist, and she and I are here tonight to talk about SEL in Scarborough, but also bring you up to date on the work that's been going on most recently. We are going, as some of you know, I have a tendency to flood people with information. And so I am leaning in and with Stacy's guidance, going to work on making this presentation a little bit more brain friendly than I've done in the past. So we've decided to, we have an hour. We want to make sure we are done on time. So we're going to do about 10 minutes, a few slides, and then 10 minutes of questions. And then 10 minutes slides and then 10 minutes. So we'll rotate that way. So if you do have questions that aren't answered by the end of this, we can certainly get those answers to you. Okay. So in terms of, let's get used to this. In terms of what is SEL, there are lots of different definitions of SEL. The school district moved forward with the CASEL framework, and CASEL is the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. It is a collaborative organization, so they do quite a bit of research in the area, but they've also developed a framework. And the beauty of this framework is its simplicity. There are 5 what we call competencies or domains or areas. So what is SEL? That red term there is a live link, but you also, I believe, have a copy of that page as well. It really just adds detail to the 5 areas: self-awareness, understanding and managing emotions, self-management, setting and achieving goals, managing your behaviors. We've heard a lot during the budget meetings, the workshops the past few days, about some of the challenges our students are experiencing. We're going to talk a lot about that tonight. Social awareness, to feel and show empathy for others, particularly others who aren't very similar to us. Relationship skills. It's important to establish and maintain positive relationships with the people we interact with and the people we meet. Responsible decision-making, making responsible decisions, learning how to set goals, move towards those goals, and make responsible and ethical decisions. So these are skills. They're sometimes called soft skills. executive functioning skills. They're sometimes called emotional intelligence. There are lots of terms for them. One of the pieces that I want people to understand that in this world of education, we use lots of acronyms. One thing to know is we have never not taught SEL. The image on the left on this slide is a report card. It was a paper-based report card we used for 10, 12 years. And we used to couch this under what's called Scarborough's guiding principles. And so many of these skills that fall within the academic domain areas are really things that we've talked about over the years. Use self-control and follows rules, accept responsibility for one's actions. Way back when, many years ago, when I was in elementary school, there was usually a citizenship score or grade on those pieces. So this is something that schools have been working towards over the years. And most recently, we have realigned those descriptions into 3 areas: self, citizenship, and work. And we still report on those in our elementary report cards. Sometimes at the middle school and high school, we've called them habits of work and learning. There are lots of different terms. But these are important skills, not only for success in school, but for success in life. So if I were to wave my magic curriculum wand, I would stop using the term SEL and talk about skills for success. Because we're really talking about life skills. How important are they? Well, the benefits reach beyond the school. And so there has been lots and lots of research done. And the beauty of CASEL is they provide a lot of that research. But really the piece that is most important is without the proper social emotional skill development, the academic performance is going to be impacted. And so this really is foundational works to ensure that our students can, and I say, bring their best brain to their learning. So also the research has indicated a decline in students' anxiety, the behavior problems, some of those things that you heard about in recent budget meetings, substance use, and then long-term improvements, of course, again, beyond school. We're teaching kids for skills beyond school. And then certainly in terms of the financial investment, there've been some cost benefit analysis, and very specifically, this 2011 a meta-analysis where they reviewed over 200 pieces of research studies. What they specifically found were links to student gains, not only in their social emotional skills, but also about their attitudes about themselves, their self-confidence, their ability, their self-efficacy, their attitudes about others, their attitudes about school, but also positive classroom behavior, which is what we really want to also start to see. And then an 11 percentile point gain on standardized achievement tests. Also, and again, reduce risks in terms of conduct problems and emotional distress. We know that many of our students are struggling with anxiety, so this really, our moving forward with SEL is quite timely. What I'd like to do is turn this over to Stacy at this point and introduce Stacy to you. Can talk a little bit about our efforts and how we've been moving forward most recently, but also this was done in 2011. Part of Stacy's role is to keep up with the current research in this area.
Yeah, so we're actually in a really interesting place right now because we have this collaboration with neuroscience and schools, and that is new. And so we have the brain research and all of this information coming out that we now can apply in the school settings. So there's actually a new field called neuroeducation, and that is the field or the study of looking at the brain's activity while learning is happening. And so we can learn a lot. And what we're learning is that really in that name, social emotional learning, it's the social and the emotional part that is really key and important as students are learning. And so we know that there's this relationship between the cognitive part of the brain and also the emotional part of the brain, and they work together. And so if we can learn and use tools to optimize both, we can get our students to grow as learners. We know that emotions influence our learning, whether we're present to the learning or not. And we know now with the brain's research that the brain is the organ for learning. It is the organ for learning, and that it is a social organ. So we need that social context in order to make sense of the learning, and we need our emotions to be in check so that we can be present to the learning. And by that, I mean like the prefrontal cortex, which is what I say to the kids, the smart thinking part of the brain. We need to be able to regulate our emotions so that we can get the learning into the smart thinking part of our brain. And if we're emotionally triggered, that's going to be challenging. We know that in order for the brain to survive, it needs to feel connected and it needs to be in relationship. And so we want to apply those concepts into the learning space. So we know from the brain science that kids need physical movement, they need socialization and creativity, they need learning chunked, like we're chunking the learning tonight. They need differentiation, emotional connectedness to the learning. We need to teach them stress management skills, and we need to have them study their own brains, understand their own brains and how they work. And so SEL really can be that tool to help create that kind of positive learning environment where students can feel empowered as learners. And that's kind of where we are in this place now with the movement of SEL. So we'll open it up now for questions on this part of the presentation. So the what and the why questions.
Questions?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's a what or a why. What does it look like in the classroom? So is there a class for SEL, or is it? What does it mean to the kids and what does it mean in the classroom?
Yeah, absolutely. And in the presentation, we're going to go into a lot
Oh,
of depth
okay.
around
So
that.
this is a later question. That's fine.
Yeah, I think roughly I can just say that it looks like a lot of different things. It looks like practices, like tools you use in the classroom. It looks like direct instruction where we chunk learning and give direct intentional instruction about social emotional skills. It looks like a classroom that has a quiet space, dim lighting, soft cushions, flexible seating. So it can look like your practices, your direct instruction, or the environments and supports. And then that will not just that, I'm just speaking from a classroom, but then we talk about the systemic approach to it a little bit later on. What does it look like in the school or in the community?
The need for physical movement, we hear a lot about that. At work that we're encouraged to get up every so often too. But what does that like vary by age range? Like, do little kids, I assume, need to get up way more frequently?
Yeah, I mean, developmentally, it talks in terms of frequency, like how often and how much for sure. But I will say even our high school students need that movement break. They're just much better at complying to it and just sitting and not moving, even though in their brains and bodies, they're like, I just want to get up and move.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And so I assume I don't want to like go to any
Okay.
new part, but are you implementing new strategies in the classroom for this?
Yeah, so as we navigate our work with the classroom context, with our direct instruction, we will certainly be, and we have been supporting teachers and school leaders around what are some practices that are brain friendly, what are some things you can do in the classroom, what can you do outside the classroom, in advisory, in your outside clubs, et cetera. And so we're even doing that right now, just giving teachers information, giving them the science and suggestions, giving them the tools. And lots of teachers already know this and they're using these things. But what we'll talk about more is that we want to create this systemic approach. So we don't just want pockets of goodness here and there. We want to make sure that all students, as they navigate our buildings, have opportunities for physical movement.
So for example, just as an example, working with our instructional coaches, this was a book study we did, which is about curriculum and curriculum design. But it is all about how curriculum meets your neuroscience, and the final chapter is all about creating brain-friendly climates. So all of our instructional coaches have studied this and made connections with the SEL work that we're doing in the district.
Yeah. And just to add to that, we did send a team of K-12 teachers, administrators, counselors, mental health professionals. Kathy went to the Learning in the Brain Conference in Boston this fall in November. It's Learning in the Brain, and they have conferences in Boston and out in California and New York and all different topics. And so this one was really focused on mental health and technology, relationship with technology. And so we had a group of teachers that were able to hear these neuroscientists, researchers, practitioners engage in studies and share studies that people haven't seen yet, like data that people haven't even seen yet. And it was really eye-opening. And Chris too, Chris went to the conference as well. So that was a great professional development opportunity for the district. So amazing.
Is there a way, I guess, as this, I mean, it's been going on for decades, right? But now it keeps getting changed to different names. And I know there's probably some subject areas and obviously different grade levels that it becomes easier to do these things, right? Like K-2, you have a built-in, go out at recess and get up. But when you get to the high school, it's a little bit different. And because there's a different expectation for them. Is there a way or anything that you're doing to assess the teachers to make sure that they're getting some of this? And I'm thinking specifically like a history class, right? Where it's very easy just to lecture all day long. But I know I've heard about programs like History Alive, which help get the kids up and around. And it's literally teaching what is typically lectured, but doing it kind of in a dramatic way.
Yeah, I can speak to that. We have actually a very active K-12, not K-12, high school SEL steering committee. And they have been instrumental in folding in activities that are delivered during advisory. But as part of that, they're also working on ideas for practices. And actually tomorrow during the staff day, high school staff will have the opportunity to experience and learn more about many of these strategies and what we call practices that can be easily folded into classrooms. So when you're designing a lesson, even at the high school, you can build in a motor break, a stretch break, or you assign people to go get materials instead of making sure that they're all at place, those kinds of things. So depending on the department, depending on the activities, there are lots of ideas. And sometimes it's just, okay, everyone stand up, let's take a physical break during that class period. And they do get motor break between classrooms, but trying to fold that in within the classroom is also something that we're going to be promoting.
And I know at the high school too, they are doing like a crosswalk between the CASEL competencies, the 5 CASEL competencies, and teaching best practices from Marzano. And so as a secondary teacher myself, right, like we're heavy in our content, we know what we need to cover and do. And yet we can think about how we do that with this kind of lens of these other competencies. And so teenagers, we know they're social beings, they want to feel connected. So offering more think, pair, shares, having students retell the learning instead of you giving them notes of key points, right? Like there are these practices that we know as teachers that we can help and cultivate. But when we're more intentional about what does that look like in terms of the CASEL competencies and the SEL competencies, it starts to kind of make those connections, and we're building those opportunities for sure.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, right on time schedule.
Okay, good. Okay, so I talked a little bit about the systemic approach to this work. And as Monique mentioned, CASEL is really where we kind of hang our hat on. That is the collaborative that is filled with neuroscientists, researchers, practitioners, teachers, like all sorts of people who come together from different fields to advance this work. So they're advancing the work by building and learning about the research, finding evidence-based practices so that we can bring this into a system. So if you look at the wheel that you see here, you see the 5 CASEL competencies in the middle, right? And they're orange because self-awareness and self-management, that's really about the individual. How do I focus on my individual self identity? And then the green, social awareness, relationship skills, that's the social self, right? Who am I as a social person? And then the responsible decision-making really is then that connection to individual, social, and then how do I apply that out into the world? How do I make those connections? And then the outer part of the wheel, you'll see, okay, systems. We want to do this in classrooms. We want to do this in schools. We want families and caregivers to be part of this and communities. And so the work has been going on in Scarborough for a long time, making great progress and pockets of goodness, but we want to see this be something that is systemic, that all students and teachers have access to. So we looked at planning in these 4 strategic areas. So the first area is really to build foundational support and understanding around CASEL and help make a plan. So we, with COVID kind of putting a little bump into the progress that you all were making here, we wanted to reestablish the SEL teams. So we have steering committees at K2, at 3-5, at 6-8, and 9-12 for all phase levels have an SEL steering committee. So that is established now. We also wanted to start with the adults, which is what CASEL recommends. We wanted to make sure that central office, our leadership, really had opportunities to build understanding of what SEL is together through the CASEL work. We wanted to model these SEL practices in leadership meetings. And so what that looks like in terms of CASEL is they call it like signature practices. So there are 3 signature practices. How do you welcome or open up a meeting? So that would be the first thing. So a question, a 1-word check-in, a mindful moment. How can we connect and all come together and share this space together? The second practice is really this idea of how do we give a break or engage the brain in a check for understanding or learning. So we do that. And then the third piece, which gets hard because sometimes we get rushed to the end of our agendas or our meetings, and it's really that optimistic closure. How do we bring closure so that we know how is everyone feeling? Maybe it's a 1-word check-in at the end. Maybe it's a reflection question. So we do this in meetings and we modeled it in Leadership Council, but we also do this in the classroom as well. These practices start in the central office and then with building principles, and then are able to move into the classrooms as well. And then we wanted to support our leaders with their SEL action plans, their own action plans for their building. So that was really important. Then we wanted to make sure that we were going to strengthen the adult SEL competencies and capacity. So building on the work that's already been done in Scarborough, we worked last summer, K5 at the Summer Academy, to infuse a little bit of SEL with students, but also to practice with adults. So we gave them some SEL learning that they could give to their students during Summer Academy. We had an SEL summit last summer, and we were able to bring in experts and presenters with all different focused topics to help build, again, that understanding of what SEL is. We created an SEL news, so every week there's an opportunity to read about adult SEL as well as student SEL. Learning in the Brain, I mentioned that. We went to the conference, which was amazing, brought that PD back to our staffs, had resources available to share with other members of the community, and then micro PDs here and there as topics are needed, and then whole staff days. We're having one tomorrow. Super excited to have our presenters here looking at safe and inclusive schools. Then we wanted to promote SEL for students. So we realized that we had a lot of great practices happening, but what about that consistent core instruction? So that was something we're like, And then SEL instruction is actually happening at High School Advisory. They have in their advisory evidence-based instruction, but are they moving it into the classroom? Are we seeing those practices in the content? And then always reflecting on our panorama data and making sure that we have that continuous improvement. And then as you see here, we take away the competencies and then we have this outer structure, right? So the components to SEL really to be systemic are to look at our skills and competencies. So the Castle 5, that direct instruction for students, and then adult learning. The adult SEL learning is really important. And then opportunities to practice this for students and staff to practice it within school and then outside of school. And then environments and supports. So what kind of school-wide practices, what kind of environments, like in many of the school buildings now we have quiet spaces for teachers where we have like mood lighting and you know, opportunities for them to go and have a quiet moment to kind of just take a breath. And then we want to make sure that we align our equity practices and our policies and provide additional supports for students. So we can't forget data. We want to make sure that we are always checking our data, and we have this great tool, which is the Panorama Survey, which can help align our efforts and give us great information about what's happening with our students. So right here, you see the winter 2023 data. So this is current data. And you can see one thing I'll note is K2. The survey there is actually a teacher perception survey. So it is a survey where teachers are answering the questions for the students based on their perception, whereas 312 students are answering the questions. But you can start to see some trends there, right? So if you look at our growth areas, self-efficacy, certainly a growth area, and self-efficacy really is like that idea around your own perception, how well you can do something or you believe you can do something. Self-management, which is really that kind of self-control, being able to manage your impulse. And then emotional regulation, how well do I manage my emotions? And then growth mindset really is this idea again around what is my perception of whether I can change factors in my environment or within myself to increase my performance. So the data we looked at as I get into the next piece was winter 22 in thinking about what a core instruction need might be, but the data does not look much different from 22 to 23. We're still seeing that emotional regulation, self-management, and self-efficacy are the areas we need to focus on. So we'll go to the next slide. So we kind of did this as a leadership, and then we said, okay, we want to bring this work to our teachers and our building leaders, working with their teachers to help them assess their own efforts. Like we didn't want to tell them like, this is what we're seeing. We wanted them to kind of do their own assessment around this. And so they asked themselves as leaders and as teachers in each of the buildings, what are we doing in terms of SEL? What does it look like for us at Blue Point or at the middle school or at Pleasant Hill? Is there core instruction happening? Are there practices happening? And are they happening across all the classrooms? And so when we investigated that, we came up with some findings. So a strength for us was definitely that we had these amazing practices happening in classrooms and schools, but our opportunity for improvement was it wasn't systemic. And just going back to the idea of how do we create this systems approach. So we needed to reflect and think, okay, core direct instruction across K-8 really is something that is needed. And noting there that the high school has already compiled a core programming in advisory. For the next slide. So that's kind of walking you through our systemic approach before we get to our core instruction, which is the last part of our workshop around core instruction, the benefits of it, and then which ones we our process for selecting a core instruction, and then which ones we selected. So questions on the piece that we just covered now.
How long has this data been going on for, like the data collection for the Panorama?
Yes.
Is that just this last year or?
No.
No, actually, we began contracting with Panorama back in 2019, and we actually used it. It's a survey tool, and there are choices for questions and topics. And so we used it actually during our distance learning days to get feedback from the community and such. We also used it last year to do our community needs analysis for our systemic plan. But in terms of topics for tracking certain consistent topics, about 3 years now. We've got 3 years of data where we have some consistent topics. We do have some questions within those topics that were used in other surveys that we can track probably for 5 years.
And I'm sure with COVID, that makes it hard to see exactly what the issues are necessarily, because now you're getting back in, because I'm thinking, you know, I was looking at this and seeing how as the kids get older, things like growth mindset and self-efficacy are going down. And I'm like, why is that? And, you know, where is that coming from and how do you turn that around? But I'm curious if that's actually better than where it might have been in the past. I don't know.
Well, we do have within the tool, we have a couple of different options for comparison data. We have not yet tracked cohort data. We only have maybe 2 or 3 years of that. So that just starts to give us a trend for cohort data. And the way in which we do the survey is anonymous. So tracking any one individual's pieces would be challenging. Yeah. But it does give us some information through the pandemic on how our students are doing. It is a student perception data on how they believe they're doing. And they report in percent favorable.
And it also goes back to when you ask students to reflect on themselves, they are often their worst critic.
I was just gonna say, like,
It's so
that's
true,
what I was
yeah.
gonna say, like, think about where these kids are. That's
Mhm.
puberty. That's when you're questioning everything and you don't feel comfortable in your skin and
Yeah.
all the things that teenagers have
Yeah.
going on, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when you talk about self-efficacy, which is essentially your self-confidence, it's
Yes.
understandable that that's.
Yeah.
Yeah, and our principals and social workers and guidance counselors do have access to the topic results of individual students, so they can track if there is a student who is basically saying, I need some help. Those folks can follow up with those students and engage parents and communicate with parents on that to help support the student. Irregardless of the most perfect direct instruction and such, some students, as you heard in the budget meeting, some of our students need more supports than others, and that will continue to happen. What we're looking to do is minimize that.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that while it's perception, so like, how do you really scale that perception to be accurate or not, right? The key in that finding is that students are struggling with that idea of self-confidence. So what tools, what practices, what supports can we give them to start to build like that positive self-talk, like how to get rid of like negative thoughts or black or white thinking. So, or all or nothing thinking. So it's really, that's where we want to get into the work with them.
And there's some functionality there to be able to compare to other similar schools, not necessarily our neighbors, but on a national level, because their pool is over several million kids doing these surveys and things like that. So that we can, and so exactly that, you know, we may be in the 90th percentile, but nationally it's pretty low anyway, just because of the nature of where kids are at.
So
So
you're seeing
it gives
those-
us a national read, a little
Those
bit
are
of a
consistent.
national read. Yes.
Okay.
And again, the purpose of using it is really to help us get a sense of where are our students overall?
Sure.
And then, you know, what practices and or instruction, you know, should we be thinking about in terms of as we push things forward?
I think it's so interesting because I just think of my daughter who's 5 and she's going through a lot of this social emotional learning herself right now. Man, she drives us crazy, but it's interesting because it doesn't change. But I think as parents and as educators, we forget that. And I think that it's really important that as kids get older, you know, your concerns, your stresses, your pressures, all of that doesn't go away. And so when I see all of this, you know, we hear about things in the news about suicide rates and whatnot. And I'm like, okay, things like that are directly connected to how you feel about yourself and your confidence to get over a hurdle and whatnot. So, you know, it's just, to me, I wouldn't say alarming, but obviously it's concerning and it's not it's not a surprise, I don't think, to anybody here. It's just kind of a reminder that we need to make sure our older kids are taken care of in a social, emotional manner as much as our little kids are.
Well-
Absolutely. And the other piece of this is, we're not trying to take this, our direction isn't to take stress away.
Sure.
Stress exists,
Yeah.
you know, it's very human. The amygdala
Right.
gets
How
activated.
you
It's
handle it.
how you handle it. And those are the skills we want to teach.
Well, one of the most important lessons in recent years from neuroscience is that your brain, the development of your brain during adolescence is as rapid as it is in your first year of life.
Yeah, yes.
And so you have that window of time where, you know, that's what's happening. That development is happening so fast, and that development and changes that are happening as part of your brain, you're vulnerable to a whole host of things when you're going through those years.
Yeah. And I think there's two, like I mentioned yesterday, when we started talking about this is when you really, when you think about it, not at a child level, but you think about it at an adult level, you're talking about emotional intelligence, right? It's how you regulate you recognize and regulate yourself, and how you recognize and regulate your relationships, right? And those are things that we know through research directly translate to leadership skills and being able to be a good leader. And the good news about all of those skills is that they can be learned. It's not like you're born with them or you're not. They are all things you can develop. And so like drilling that down at this level, it's almost like you're setting them up for success at a very young age, right? To develop.
It's leadership, but it's also, this is emotional intelligence is what employers are looking for.
Yeah.
Well, that's what,
Absolutely.
this made me think of the Pathways program that was presented the other day, and how those kids can see confidence in, maybe they're not as strong in academics, but maybe there's a skill set that
Mhm.
really brings that confidence level up.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Other questions?
Did you say there was a newsletter?
Yes.
Okay.
For staff, just for staff.
Oh, okay.
At this.
I was
Yeah.
gonna say, is some of that educational material going home, like, so families can kind of,
Yeah, I think our next phase
Mhm.
is like, again, that systemic approach of supporting our adults and our organization. So once we have that understanding and that capacity, now we want to move into like community, families, caregivers, absolutely, yeah. And that will be our next phase.
very
Yeah,
exciting.
yeah.
The process.
The process. So we started this process in the fall. And we wanted to, once we realized that core instruction was something that we needed K-8, we wanted to make sure that we had a process that was robust, that was going to be inclusive of everyone that wanted to be part of it, and was again based on research and science. And so we are super lucky because again, we have CASEL, and CASEL has done a ton of work to try to help school districts use this systemic approach. So if you go on CASEL, you can find toolkits, you can find webinars, you can find all these created tools that you can use as a district to support your efforts. So we leaned in on CASEL because they also have this one component, which helps you to select an evidence-based core instruction program for SEL. And they give different programs, different ratings. And so CASEL Select is the highest rating that you can get under CASEL in terms of programs. So we wanted to make sure that whatever programs we looked at had that CASEL Select rating. And then the other tool that we leaned on was ESOL. And ESOL it stands for the Ecological Approaches to Social and Emotional Learning. And this is the ESOL lab. It's run by Dr. Stephanie Jones, and she's from Harvard Graduate School of Education. And what her team did is they created basically, I'll say, as Jen Humphrey says, the consumer guide for SEL programs, which is like the perfect description of it. So literally, like you're buying a car, you go in and you see all the programs and all the specs and all the things that it will do for you. And they've done this analysis for 33 programs now. It was 25, and they added a couple of out-of-school programs. So we're up to 33 programs. And it really helps schools make informed decisions around their own SEL needs and how they can choose a program that best fits them. And so they give you a worksheet template and said, like, you can follow this process. So we catered that process to meet our needs in the district. And we came up with 4 programs that we decided to look at. So Mind Up, Paths, Responsive Classroom, and Ruler. We did have Leader in Me in there at the middle school, but we decided after lots of work and looking at Leader in the Me, that it didn't meet our needs at the middle school level. And you can click on that and you can see that in the K-8 curriculum review. So what we did is we established selection committees at the primary level, the intermediate level, and middle schools. It was open to whomever would like to join the group. We had counselors, mental health professionals, we had administrators, we had teachers, we had coaches, all part of these committees. And then each of the committees went through a process of first deciding what are our school needs. And to decide what our school needs are, we look to the data. What is the panorama data saying about our students at Wentworth, at Blue Point? Then after needs, we talked about what are our desired instructional methods? What kind of methods do we want in order to deliver this curriculum? And then the other piece was desired program components. So is this a program that has adult SEL? Is this a program that has professional development, et cetera, et cetera? Flexibility and fit. And then we, within the committees, we decided to first score the programs individually. So we created a rubric that was modeled off of what Castle recommends to use. And we rated all the programs individually. Then we worked in teams, small teams. So we went from individual ratings to then teams. We shared our individual ratings, and then we gave it a team score. So we scored each of the programs as a team. And then from there, we looked at our team ratings, and then we had to build consensus to say, okay, which program do we see that people are selecting, and then we came to consensus. Then our next step was to create some initial recommendations and implementation plans, share with Leadership Council our recommendations. And then the link there at the bottom is the summary with each of the timelines from the different buildings. So a K2 timeline of how we went through that process with links. And then also links to that material needs and material analysis document, which will tell you what were the needs established at Wentworth, what were the instructional methods they wanted, what were the program components. So you can see all of that in that hyperlink.
And that's all within your packet, and you have the sample rubrics, and you have the EASL Lab did a program snapshot, and we've included the program snapshot for both Ruler as well as MindUp. You also have for each of the schools, you have the materials analysis documents that each group worked through, one that looks kind of like this, that will give you sort of the step-by-step that each group went through. So that you can see the entire process and the priorities each group chose, and then also the ratings as well. And so for K2.
Yep, so for K2, you can see the rating tool that we came up with there. And on the left are the program components, materials, et cetera, so the different descriptors, and then the different programs, and then how the teams rated them. And so we selected MindUp as a recommendation to be made for our SEL core instruction. MindUp is from the Goldie Hawn Foundation. It was developed in 2003, and it was in partnership with Scholastic. Really, the mission of creating MindUp was to help students manage stress, help them regulate emotions, and face challenges in the 21st century with optimism, resilience, and compassion. Beautiful. So it's based on 4 pillars. One is neuroscience. The other one is mindful awareness, positive psychology, and SEL skills. The program has 4 units. The first unit is My Mindful Brain. Second one, My Mindful Senses. The third unit is Building Well-Being with a Mindful Mindset. And the last one is Mindful of Ourselves in the World. So kind of outlining that in terms of the program. When we looked at the program, we identified that it addressed the student skill focuses in the areas that we needed. It had extensive professional development, a trainer model, and focused on adult SEL, which we, as all the teams said, we really want to make sure we have adult SEL as part of the program to support our teachers and build their capacities, and that that it met that emotional regulation, self-efficacy, social awareness piece, and that we had enough professional development training, so this was successful for them. So that's Mind Up for our K2. And then for our 3-5 and 6-8, but this is 3-5, both phases selected Ruler. And so Ruler is, it stands for, it's an acronym, recognizing, understanding, labeling, expressing, and regulating emotions. So this was developed by Mark Brackett. He's the founder of Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, and he's a research psychologist. And he created Ruler really as a program to help students, families, and educators build what Shannon talked about, which was emotional intelligence. So the whole premise is building that EQ so that our students are equipped to go out into the world. It has 5 units. The first unit is community, safety, and climate. Second one is emotions matter. Third one is self and social awareness. The fourth is emotional regulation and personal values. And the other one is empathy, perspective taking, and community restoration. Ruler really has this focus on emotional intelligence, and it does it through anchors. And so the anchored tools are, one is a mood meter, which helps students and adults recognize, label, and assess their moods. Meta moment, which is opportunity to create response, pause when we're emotionally triggered, so we can choose to do an action that is a healthier action versus a reaction. And then there's the blueprint, which is created to help manage conflict and disagreement. And then the charter, which is a community building charter around how to create safe and inclusive environments in our schools. Mark Brackett wants to support educators in creating, he calls them emotional scientists versus emotional judges. And so he knows and talks about the emotional intelligence really mattering because it's tied to attention, memory, and learning. It helps us with decision-making, relationship quality, physical and mental health, and performance and creativity. And he talks about students and adults that have high EQ, have empathy, well-being, pro-social behavior, leadership skills, and academic achievement, which are the things we want our people to have. And then students or adults that struggle with emotional intelligence, you might see that there are conduct issues, anxiety, depression, attentional problems, and aggressive behaviors. And then again, we decided that at 3-5 and 6-8, that Ruler addresses students' skill focused areas of greatest needs as presented through the Panorama survey, that there's extensive professional development. Actually, we get a full year of training our adults as we implement some of those anchors before we even get to the lesson piece. And then it's also about building that adult SEL competency. And then for middle school here, you can see they evaluated Ruler and Mind Up as their last 2 programs after they eliminated Leader in Me, and Ruler was the recommendation. Any questions on selection process?
And we're a minute ahead of
Oh.
schedule.
That.
Wonderful.
Are there any questions? So I'm kind of thinking ahead, like, as you talk about the core and involving all the stakeholders, which is I'm gonna be like you, I'm gonna hold it away.
I know.
Communities, your families, your schools, your classrooms, right? So when you're involving everything, is there a way to maybe put some of the curriculum online so parents can have these conversations at home? Is that allowed?
It's
Yes.
actually built into the curriculum to
okay,
engage
perfect.
parents and share the tools with parents and
Yes.
community. We've also done in the past, and it depends on the training we receive, is done sort of parent universities, have
Mhm.
nights explaining the curriculum and opportunity to learn more about it, to ask questions and that sort of thing. So that's all going to be part
Yes.
of the implementation planning.
Yeah, it's a key
Yeah.
component for both programs. And then we also get to contextualize that in terms of like, do we want to have it in stat or in family news? Like, is there a highlight of what the focus is that we're learning in the building that week? Like, we're focusing on mindful brain, and these are some things you can do to talk with your kiddos, and maybe a diagram. So all of that will certainly come as we move through this process. Yeah.
Is there a way for you to see if who's clicking on it or how many people are clicking on the material? Because these are all great resources and all, but you can give it out, but how do we know that they're reading it,
Yeah.
digesting it, and utilizing
Yeah.
the tools that you're giving them?
In terms of parents and community,
Any,
on the
any
news.
adult
in the
that will be
newsletters and
kind of
things?
going through it.
I don't know, I'd
So-
have to talk to Sean around whether or not we can get some of that data in terms of how many hits on certain sites. I think.
Yeah, and it depends on what medium we're using.
Right.
Like if we were sending
S'more is-
SEL resources in our S'more,
You
for
can see it.
example. That definitely has accounts. I think we've talked about that a little bit before, and the other beauty about using S'more is it does have the translatability. For
All of that,
front-facing material, and as we know, that's, a really critical component. As, we grow more diverse in our community. Yeah.
And I think it's important that we differentiate the learning for families as well. So like, you might be a reader, or you might be a person that needs to be in person and hear it. Like, you might be a person that small group videos. So I think it's really important to differentiate that access to the information. So it reaches as many people as we can.
So as these programs are new adoptions, those fall under the curriculum line. And so that's what has been built within the budget, within the curriculum lines. And what that looks like is there's the materials, there's the training. And there's the funding to fund teachers to come together in the summer to collaborate, to look more deeply at the lessons, build a scope and sequence, do some more intensive planning on those pieces. Ruler is a 2-year commitment. And then there's sort of the just subscription to the materials and those sorts of things. So in this first year, it would be within the curriculum piece, and the bulk of it is really professional development and training for the staff is really the bulk of it. The materials cost less, than cost. Mind Up is a subscription that staff will have, an online subscription. They used to have a little booklet from Scholastic, but they've gone online, and so they've got more offerings, more information for staff. And then Ruler is an online platform, but I have a site-wide license for that. It'll be a site-wide, and there'll be a fee for that during years 3.
We have an estimate. Funny, because that's what I was just saying.
Yeah.
Like what, being the money gal, so like between Ruler, Mind Up, Castle, Panorama, probably Castle. What does the investment look like?
I'd have to go back
Yeah.
and now, when I built the budget, what
Yeah.
I do typically, because I didn't know which choices, so
Right.
we sort of asked for some initial quotes, so there's some
Yeah.
ballpark numbers there.
Uh-huh.
So I'd have to go back and kind of hone in. We're in the process now of sort of setting this and scheduling the trainings and those costs. And I know the numbers of people involved, so I know how much we're gonna have to pay them. I can estimate the amount of time during the summer and then what our ongoing subscription costs will be. The other part of some of the subscriptions is how many staff do we have, those kinds of things. So I can certainly get that number to you. Yeah. And we may, because of that, and I want to ensure when I develop the initial budget that we have enough money for that. So sometimes I can do some efficiencies, because for example, for Ruler, we can now negotiate because we have 2 schools, not just one
Yeah.
school, that
Yeah.
sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I can put that together for them.
And to go back to your question around like, what does this look like in the classroom and when is it going to happen and all of that? So that is going to be the next phase once we get this initial training around bringing a group of teachers and staff members and leaders together, working with building principals to decide, okay, where do we want to place this in our day? So is it going to look like it starts at morning meeting, we extend that, we do direct instruction for like 15 minutes on the topic, and then we practice it throughout the week? Does it look like we have it in the newsletter, we have the theme school-wide? So those are all the things that we're going to be working out, but the idea is that the SEL work shouldn't just be happening in like advisories or in just morning meeting. Like that is a place to do that direct instruction, but it's really the transfer of those skills and like those anchors or the pillar piece I was talking about that we need to bring into the content areas, because that is where we can make those deep connections. And again, that's where SEL and academic development come together. That's where the social and the emotional brain come together, that we're using these tools to then help students apply that when they're struggling with a math problem or they're struggling with feeling included in a classroom space, et cetera.
And as one who had the opportunity to ride a bus several times this year in the fall, I think it's also important that it is school-wide and district-wide. Our bus drivers need to know the language that's involved. Our kitchen workers need to know, our custodians need to know. We need to have visuals up in school so that it becomes, it's the whole school community, including parents and families supporting that. So that this is just what we do. And here's your opportunity to practice.
Well, it becomes part of the culture, right?
Yeah,
When it's-
yeah.
When it's everybody.
Well, and that's why we framed it as this isn't like new all of a sudden now. We have to teach something additional to everything else, right? This is all embedded in being, and educating our kids, right? It's part of the environment, it's part of the routines. It's significant on the bus, it's significant in classrooms, no matter, all the way on through. So it's just embedded in everything we do.
Take away classroom time or math or whatever.
We'll enhance it
gonna
because-
be- Yeah.
Ideally enhance it,
Thank you.
exactly.
Thank you so
And
much.
I do have an odd request. I love emotional intelligence and the brain and the way it works. And I've done a lot of research into this and actually teach it quite a bit. But if there's ever an opportunity that maybe we could attend some classes, that would be a really awesome opportunity as well.
Sure.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So some of the things that you talked about, like the little this quiet spaces for kids and whatever, it strikes me that some of our, or most of our K-2 classrooms, that could be a real challenge. Is that's something
Yes.
really to talk about when we talk about the new buildings, how.
Well, I think as we have been, if you recall, like when we were doing all of the planning and design in the early stages, those were things that were specific pieces of, as you talk about like flexible furniture and different kinds of lighting and that sort of thing. So those things have already been kind of built in to the core design.
Yeah. Excellent.
It's
Yeah.
funny, funny you say that because we're designing our new headquarters where I work. And they're building in flexible furniture.
Yep.
It's a lot more confident corporate space.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like a little quiet room if you need to just be by yourself.
The difference is when you walk into a newly designed
Yeah.
elementary school or even middle school or high school are, so evident. It's
And-
powerful.
There is research that states that it improves academic performance. It is directly connected to the facility.
Oh, yeah.
And the quality.
Even to have like a dimmer on the.
Yeah.
left versus like on, off, right?
Yeah.
Like a place that is cluttered with,
Yes.
because there's not enough storage.
Yes.
Overstimulation.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very, very much. Thanks for coming. We look forward to hearing from you both again.
Yes.
All right, so we'll just take maybe a minute break, maybe 2 minutes.
Back there, I think we have a pretty
All right, good evening and welcome to the Thursday, March 16th Scarborough Board of Education Board Meeting. Can we have the attendance, please, Dan?
Sure. Mrs. Gammon.
Here.
Mr. Kelleher,
Here.
Miss Leong.
Here.
Mrs. Lindstrom,
Here.
Mr. Marino,
Here.
Ms. Tarpinian,
Here.
Mr. Peony Huff,
Here.
Miss Bertulia,
Here.
and Mr. Shumway.
He's been excused. All right, would everybody please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? All right, agenda item 4.0 are adjustments to the agenda. Are there any adjustments this evening?
No adjustments.
Perfect. Agenda item 5.0 is public comment on agenda items. Is there anybody today wishing to make public comment? Either in person or online? All right, seeing none, we will close public comment. Agenda item 6.0 is the Spotlight Award recognition. So for this, I will turn it over to Jillian.
All right, so we have kind of a fun presentation. I mean, they're all fun. This is a little bit different than normal. So we have two winners tonight. And those people are in the room, I understand. And you could- if you could advance a slide, they are.
Oh, hang on. Oh,
We're not going back. Sean Bushway and Kim Kelly. All right, and so we will talk about who submitted this nomination on the next slide, and that is should go Victoria Lemlin, and Lemelin, sorry, oh my God, I asked her too. So Victoria couldn't be here tonight, but she did want to make sure that we know there was a team of people that on the next slide that also were part of this. And we got a lot of feedback. It was really, really nice. It's like pages of feedback. It was really nice. So, and they had a little something to say on the next slide.
Congratulations, Kim and Sean.
Yes.
So I will just read a little bit about what Victoria had to say, and then we have some people who are also going to speak. But I just want to say that, you know, this department are definitely unsung heroes. We've heard so much about the many projects going on, and the massive number of people that are supported by this small but mighty team. I cannot underscore enough the value this group brings to the entire community, but especially the schools. So what Victoria had to say is, on behalf of Scarborough School District Data Team, we are excited to submit a Spotlight Award for Sean Bushway and Kim Kelly, Student Information System Specialists. Sean and Kim have been instrumental in bringing our student data team, consisting of secretaries, receptionists, and other support staff from all the schools in the district together to build relationships, collaborate, and learn to form our team. Over the past few years, they have worked diligently on providing many deliverables for our district. All have been welcome changes that make things easier and more efficient, not just for us as employees, but for our students, parents, and guardians. They have spent countless hours answering questions, from spending an hour with our team on a monthly basis to offering drop-in hours. And being available whenever we need them. In turn, their leadership has enabled us to build relationships with each other and contact each other for support. Teamwork in action. A few examples of deliverables are Raptor Emergency Management, and that is to keep our students and staff safe. Bright Arrow, which is to communicate with the district and families more effectively, and Power School. So many exciting changes with contacts, alerts, and most exciting, online enrollment. And that was said from Victoria, who works at the middle school. And now I think we have a few people who wanted to come up. So you're welcome to come up and speak.
Go first, because I have the paper. Hi, everyone. I am Lori O'Lory, and I am the secretary at Pleasant Hill. Thank you so much to Sean and Kim. We were just joking that we give them so much job security because we call them constantly. This was what I had submitted to Vicky. Sean and Kim have worked tirelessly over a long period of time to make online enrollment a reality. This will make our registration process so much easier and less error prone for both families and staff. In addition, they are always available to help and support our entire team and go above and beyond by anticipating issues that may occur and addressing them before they happen.
I'm Linda Lee Landry. I work at Wentworth School. For many years, I've been requesting that Scarborough schools consider online enrollment. This year, Kim Kelly and Sean Bushway have made online enrollment a reality here in Scarborough, bringing us up to par with surrounding districts and finally putting forward our technically savvy foot. For their dogged research and support, I am grateful. Their efforts to make this necessary technical transition should be honored and acknowledged.
Okay. I'm Maureen Kirsch and I work at Eight Corners. Kim Kelly and Sean Bushway have been working incessantly to transition our archaic registration process to online enrollment. It's a superhuman project they have completed that will benefit the entire Scarborough School District immensely. This alone would be quite a feat with all of the complicated parts involved to implement it. However, while Kim and Sean worked on the online enrollment, they also constantly fielded regular questions from all of us about our day-to-day technology and PowerSchool issues. And every single time I call Kim or Sean, I'm greeted with such supportive, pleasant, and patient responses. These two people are treasures. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much.
With other comments, but we won't read them.
Okay. I think it goes without saying there was a lot of really great support on this one. It was really nice to see. Sean and Kim, would you mind coming up to the front? They're like-
Congratulations to both of you.
Thank you so much.
All right, agenda item 7.0 is the Scarborough High School Winter Sports and Activities Recognition. So at this time, I would like to call Mike Legay.
Congratulations, Kim and Sean.
Yeah.
Why not do it again, right?
Well, good evening. We want to get right started because I know you have a full agenda and I'm going to call coaches up and they'll talk a little bit about their season and the club advisors that are here. And then we have another special, some other special awards to give. I think Senator Brenner is here to give out some awards as well. So very nice of her to take her time to be here as well. So we'll start right with boys basketball, Coach Phil Conley.
So I wanted to first introduce two of my captains. We had tri-captains this year. First, Liam Jeffords is not here. He's unable to make it tonight. We have Ethan Blanche, a senior, tri-captain for us, and Liam Garapi. And they were, all three were outstanding leaders for me and for our school program on and off the court. It's very important to have outstanding leaders, and they were this year. So our season, we started out with a little bit adversity right off the bat. Liam, one of our top players, was just coming back from a knee surgery. And so he was out for 3/4 of the year. So we had to learn to play without one of our better players. We also started the season 3-7. So as a team, we talked about, how are we going to deal with this adversity? We didn't start out the way we wanted to. We're waiting for one of our guys to come back. So we had 3 or 4 team meetings to talk about staying positive with each other, believing in yourself, believing in your teammates, believing in your coaching staff. And then I asked them, what can we do? We're 3-7. What can we do to right the ship, to be a better team? So we went around the room in the classroom. It was a great learning experience. And they all gave, suggestions like things that we could do better. Maybe that was at practice. Maybe that was in, game situations. And we really stayed together as a group and really worked hard. And it was great. They had some buy-in. We listened as a coaching staff to what they had to say. And we got better as the season went on. And, we went into the playoffs as the 6th seed with only 6 wins. We went to Gorham, who had 14 wins on their home court in front of a packed crowd. And we won, we upset them and we won 59-58. It was a great accomplishment for these guys after a tough start, but that just goes to show you stick with it. And these guys and my team certainly did that this year. So it was a very successful year. It was also a very successful year for me too, because I've been coaching here at Scarborough. This is my 7th year, but this is my 1st year. I have the opportunity to teach at Scarborough High School. And what a world of difference that makes, to be with your players every day, not just in season, out of season, to have them down in the office for lunch. We talk not just about basketball, but about life, but about school. And it's just a pleasure to be able to teach and coach at this great high school, at Scarborough High School. So I appreciate the opportunity and thank you for all you do. Thank you.
And I'll introduce Coach Whitmore with girls basketball.
Thank you. The girls basketball team this year was really exciting. Mike Giordano, the head coach, creates a wonderful atmosphere, and we're blessed to be able to have him, and in this 50th year anniversary of Title IX, to have Lisa Manning, one of the great players in that 50-year period, on our staff, and she's an absolutely wonderful resource in many, many respects. Our team came off a wonderful season last year in which we were 16-4 and did a wonderful job. This year, we were the youngest team in the league, maybe one of the youngest teams in all of Maine high school basketball. We started 3 sophomores, a junior and a senior, and the inexperience we had to learn through the inexperience. And in doing so, we had a lot of close games. We ended up with a 9-11 record. That 9-11 record put us into 5th place. And we were able to go to South Portland in the preliminary playoff game and beat South Portland at South Portland. And that was a great accomplishment for these young players. We had success in a lot of ways, but we also were very, very close in a lot of ways, in that we lost 3 games in overtime. And that would have changed the season even more. But the big thing is we have 12 of our players coming back next year. We have good talent. We had a first team all SMAA in Caroline Hartley, and the second team all SMAA in Emmy Flaker. And so we have, I think, a big future ahead of us. Thank you.
Our chair coaches couldn't be here tonight, but sent along a message and just said that the Scarborough cheer had a very successful season. They started off the season placing 2nd in their first competition, which was the Gorham Rampage Invitational. We went on to place 4th in the SMAA League Championship, but certainly one of their biggest accomplishments of the season was the relationships athletes developed through their participation in the program, not only within our own program, but with other cheer teams in our league and around the state. As a team, they spent time creating weekly notes to encourage other teammates on competition weeks. And they also had created gift bags and good luck pins for the other teams in their conference that were passed out at the regionals. They were excited to start preparing for the next fall season and expect the numbers of students participating in cheer to continue to grow as their program evolves and develops. The cheer program had a successful season. Next up is boys ice hockey and Coach Eric Orsing.
Good evening. I'm Eric Worsing, head coach for the boys ice hockey team. I'm here with Thomas Hassett, senior captain, who will be attending the University of Maine in the fall. Alternate captain or assistant captain, Billy Mahoney, who will be attending the University of West Virginia, and assistant captain Keegan Weed, who will be attending Springfield College in the fall, where he's also committed to play football. This season, obviously coming off a state championship, we were a team to be beaten. We had a target on our back, and it didn't help that we were considered the number one ranked team going into this season. We knew every game we were going to get every opponent's best shot, and we handled that with a lot of class and a lot of dignity. We finished the season 11-7, which was a very successful regular season record, considering some of the injuries and difficulties that we had to face as a team. Unfortunately, we had a tough loss in the quarterfinals to South Portland, who ended up being runners-up for the state championship. Scarborough was well represented this year in Maine class hockey. We had 3 all-state recognitions, which includes senior Thomas Hassett, who was a defenseman junior Will Marcotte, and sophomore forward Wyatt Grondin. As well, we had 3 senior all-stars. Both Thomas and Billy will be representing Scarborough, as well as Jordan Shepard. Overall, we had a great season. No doubt that we faced some adversity, and something that we talked about as a team is how we handle adversity, not only in our athletic pursuits, but also what happens when we enter the real world after our college careers. And one thing, the biggest lesson that we probably learned is honestly how to forgive and how to heal and how to move forward as a team and as individuals, which, as we know, for high school students is a very difficult lesson to learn. But I'm really proud of how these players and how these captains stepped forward and set the tone for how we made that happen. Overall, it was a great season. This year we had over 47 players try out, and the numbers look very good for the Scarborough hockey program moving forward. Thank you.
Next up is boys indoor track, and Coach Vayu could not be here tonight. Because of the winter storm, actually, their banquet got postponed from Tuesday to tonight. So they're actually all at the high school right now having their end of the season banquet. But Coach Vayu sent along some words. For the first time in several years, we entered this season as the underdog. The message from the day one was to be consistent and put in the work each day at practice and see what happens after that. We had one of the largest teams in school history with 50+ athletes. Many were new to the sport, so the first week we were all about teaching and basic fundamentals of the sport. It was amazing to see this group progress each week, and the athletes started to gain confidence. We stressed the mental aspects. You have to believe in yourself before it is going to happen. Each meet, we improved our performance and continued to add qualifiers for the championship meets. Heading into the state championship meet, the message was simple. We didn't have to do anything special, just perform like we had all year long. Our mantra, like always, was to execute, focus on your efforts, and don't worry about other competitors. We had our best performance at the Class A state championship meet, coming away with a 69-47 victory. All of our athletes that scored in individual events did so for the first time in a state meet. We had 3 individual champions, Parker Collard in 200 meter, Adam Benditson in the 2 mile, and Nate Murray in the shot put. Not only did this group excel on the track, but 6 of our seniors were on the all academic team. Winning the program's 7th consecutive Class A state championship was unexpected at the beginning of the season, but This group showed that consistent effort over a period of time can lead to excellence. So congratulations to the boys indoor track team. Girls indoor track, they're also at the banquet. They do them together. And so Coach Curry sent along some notes and said the girls indoor track team had an impressive season under Denise Curry's first year as varsity head coach. This year, we had over 40 girls participate in the program, which is a slight increase from previous years. The team worked very hard with a simple goal of continuous improvement. Certainly a highlight for the girls program this season was the team winning the MPA Sportsmanship Award for the first time in the program's history. This award supports the work we are doing with students and is a strong indication that we are doing all the right things within our program. We are fortunate to win our conference championship and we're runners up in the state championship. I certainly could not be more proud of how hard our athletes worked this season and came together as a team. So a great honor for our girls indoor track team as well for winning the sportsmanship banner. On to boys and girls swimming and Coach Royal.
Hi, I'm Coach Morgan Royal. I am with my captains. We have Nadia Greenyuk and Brendan Ammon, Ethan Schultz, and Evan Wardrop. We are missing one of our captains who is swimming. This was my first year as head coach. I have coached previously 2012 and 17. I was assistant coach for the high school under Eric French, who was here for 12 years. And I got to come in this year as head coach, and I came on an amazing year because this team has been incredible. They were coming off the boys state championship win last year. And we were fortunate enough to maintain that title this year. Those boys went back and they beyond earned it. So, the team consisted, we have 28 swimmers. We had 15 boys, 13 girls. Our numbers are lower than what we're used to with swimming, but we're starting to build that back up, which is really nice. I'm also able to coach the middle school team. So I'm seeing those numbers increase, which is great because we can kind of filter them in through middle school up to high school. So we're building back up, which is good. So this season with the boys, our regular season, which is dual meets, we had a completely undefeated season with them, which started out with our meet against Cape Elizabeth, which is always the biggest rivalry we have. And I believe we beat them by a couple points, which started our season off great. And then those boys ran with it. So they stayed undefeated the entire season. We took second in the North Southwesterns, just behind Cape Elizabeth. And then we went to Class A state champs and we won that one. We went into that knowing that we were many, many points ahead, seeded, but these boys went in and earned it. And I did tell them that we weren't going to act like we deserved it until we got in there and earned it. And they did absolutely that. So they had an amazing season and these boys are just incredible, the whole team, and I'm very privileged to coach them. The girls season, we had 5 wins and 3 losses, which is great. With 13 girls, they took their small numbers, but they were powerful throughout the whole season. We went into North Southwesterns. We got 5th out of 8 teams. And then in the Class A states with only 5 qualifiers, we took 10th place out of 24 teams with only 5 swimmers. So they achieved some incredible things throughout their season also. I just wanted to point out Ethan Schultz was named the Maine State Boys Swimmer of the Year from the Maine Interscholastic Swimming League. And he was also named the Boys North Southwestern Swimmer of the Year and Swimmer of the Meet. This is his senior year, and he, along with the rest of his team helping to lead, achieved amazing things. So both boys and girls did amazing things, and I am very happy that I get to coach them. So thank you very much.
And wrestling, Coach Ben Watson.
Hi, good evening. I'm Coach Ben Watson, and these are two of my captains, Luke Burns and Miguel Torres. To really understand how good this year was, you kind of have to look back, right? When you hear Scarborough High School sports, you don't automatically think perennial wrestling powerhouse, right? We're a little bit unique because we are a cooperative program with Gorham as well. And in terms of the history of the sport, I believe 2006 was the first time we had a varsity team. So we're probably the youngest team in the room. 4 years ago, we were going to cut wrestling from the budget. 3 years ago, we didn't have a competitive season. You can't be socially distant and wrestle. We had 3 kids that year work out in the gym 3 days a week. That was it. Last year, we had 10 kids. We won a dual meet, and it was the first time in almost a decade that we won as a team. This year, we had 24 members. We're graduating 2. We won 5 dual meets. It was the second best team record in the history of the program. They went 8-6 in 2006. Excuse me. With the cooperative, we really try to focus on being a family. So much so that sometimes my family has to come. We went to regionals. We didn't have the performance that we were really looking for as a team. But Luke, yes, hon. Luke was actually the only one to qualify to go to states. He took second at regionals. And then at states, he placed first at 182 pounds. He was also awarded the John C. Pelletier Most Outstanding Wrestler Award for Class A, state of Maine. That's voted on by the officials for their wrestling and their conduct on and off the mat. It's the 4th state championship wrestler in the history of Scarborough. And it was the first state champion from Gorham since 1996. So we're looking to have a really good return next year with 22 returners and 16 kids in the middle school, as well as 6 others that are at the Gorham Middle School. We'll be looking to have one of the biggest squads that we've had ever, as far as I'm aware. And that's just kind of it. You know, wrestling's tough. We really try to drive home those teachable moments, the educational based athletics, and teach things that'll carry you off the mat. So my 2 mantras are coach them hard, love them harder. And if the kids don't know, or if the kids don't learn, the adults won't know. And I think we had a lot of good success. And one last key point, Luke placed 4th at the New England qualifiers. He was a win away from going to Rhode Island. So we'll be back. Thank you.
And unified basketball, Coach McCormick.
I am Coach Albert McCormick. I got Brianna Parento here. Come on, right next. This was, I would say, our best year yet. We had the biggest unified team we've ever had. Bree was a big part of it. I can't believe that Bree's a senior. She's been here since the start of unified basketball here at Scarborough High School, and it's been an honor to have her on my team and continue to have her on my team. This year, a couple of highlights. We were undefeated in good times, which was a big success. Every game was a blast, win or lose. We had a amazing victory over Deering with a buzzer beater 3-pointer from Jeff Baldwin, and then Ruchi Patel stole the ball and ran out the clock like a veteran basketball player. Those are 2 freshmen, so we have a bright future ahead of us. I do very little. I had amazing help from my assistant coach, Coach Wazen, plus all the other assistant coaches that we have, Coach LaJoy, Coach Jorgensen, Coach Wakeham, Coach Ray, Coach Nixon, a lot of people helping out. And we also, second year in a row, blew the Scarborough staff out of the water with I think the spread was 30 and I think we beat the spread. So it was a wonderful year, and I'm so looking forward to the future of Unified Basketball. Bree asked to say a few things. You ready?
Nice. Okay. Okay. Things about basketball this year. I like going out to eat with my friends after far away games. I like listening to music on a speaker box in the bus. I like having fun for games. I like putting my arm up, that's my part, and to make people cheer for me and make it louder after I make a basket. And basketball is my favorite part of high school, and I like dogs.
Did such a good job.
Okay, and next up is Vex Robotics with Allison Avery and Carrie Curtis.
Hi, I'm Allison Avery. I have had the privilege. No, him. Kind of taking over for Coach Curtis this year. He's been an amazing mentor for me this year, taking on this team that has grown from 8 kids last year to over 20 this year, including 2 teams that couldn't be here tonight. We have one team that's pretty much all girls, which is an improvement from last year where we only had 1 girl. The program keeps growing exponentially, which is super exciting. We have 2 teams here that are our state champions. So there's always 2 teams that are the champions of each tournament, and our teams aligned and they both won it. So they are fundraising their little butts off right now because we're hoping to go to Dallas for the world's champions, which means that they're in the top 8% of 20,000 teams in the world that are competing at this. Accomplishments this year have been on and off our tournaments. I think that they've all overcome a lot of challenges throughout their journeys this year. Z had to scratch one of their meets, which their robot was not even meeting any sort of functioning. And I was so proud of them. They took that opportunity to reflect on what they were doing, what needed to be worked on, and they actually volunteered that match. So they still came up on the bus with us and they volunteered. They were helping out other teams, working with other teams. It was a really humbling experience for them and they took it in stride. R has also been there through their challenges. They've had meets where they have been the bottom. And then somehow they pull it together, they're communicating, they're working together, they're leaning on each other, and then they come out and they're finalists. I'm not sure how they've done it sometimes, but they've done it. And over the course of this season alone, they've taken home 9 trophies with all 4 teams. One of the most proud coach moments that I had was when they won the State Excellence Award. So this is the highest prestige award that's given in VEX, and it's for conduct, overall performance, and just outstanding design and engineering process like demonstration. So these are students who are academically focused. They're working through the engineering design process. And we had a couple of them who the president of IDEX has offered them opportunities for internships throughout college. So this program is really benefiting these kids. And I already have the constraint of next year. I have too many kids who are interested. So we might be asking for another coach soon. But we've had a really great season, and I'm really, really, really proud of every one of these kids, and they've worked really, really hard.
Yeah, and we're certainly honored tonight to have Senator Stacy Brenner, who represents District 30, which Scarborough is part of, to present some sentiments, legislative sentiments.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. Thank you all. First off, thank you all for your service. I know that it takes a lot to show up every time and give of yourself, and I appreciate that you're all offering that. I bring greetings from Representative Kelly Murphy, who's still in committee. She would have liked to have been here so we could have done this together, but she serves now on the Education Committee, and she's otherwise tied up this evening. But I'm also incredibly proud to represent Scarborough and incredibly proud of our athletics and robotics program. And I bring a whole bunch of sentiments. I'm not going to read each one because I know you guys have lots to do. So we'll just kind of go through it. And I know not everyone's here to receive them, but the first one is for Zero Brain Cells Robotics Team and the Red Rover Robotics Team. What are you doing?
Do you mind if we take photos really quickly?
Do you want to open them up? Yeah. So these were all presented in the Senate and they're on the calendar. So if you ever go into the archives of the state, you'll find your sentiment there. You guys.
I'm sorry, 1 second, Jenna and Mike. Coach, can you come up here too? Thank you.
Congratulations. All right, and the next one is Luke Burns for the 182-pound weight class at the Class A State Wrestling Championships. Why you don't handle it? So sorry about that. All right, then we've got a whole bunch for swimming. Wait, let's see what this one is. Oh, goodness, this is for the championship for the boys swim team, Class A state champions. And then there's a whole bunch of individual ones for the boys. There's one for Ethan Schultz for winning the 100 freestyle and the 200 freestyle at the Class A Boys State Swimming and Diving Championship. Then Evan Wardrop for winning the 100 backstroke and the Class A Boys State Swimming and Diving Championship. And then this one is for Ryan Vigue, Brendan Amen, Evan Wardrop, and Ethan Schultz for the 400 freestyle relay at the Class A Boys Swimming and Diving Championship. And Stephen Ranger, Brendan, Owen, and Evan for winning the 200 medley relay. And the same crew for the 400 freestyle relay. All right, that's what I've got. Congratulations. Yeah, nice job. I swam butterfly. Thank you. No, please hold that one. All right, and then we have a whole bunch for track, which I don't know if we want to go through each individual one, or maybe we can send them over to maybe we'll send them over to the banquet. All right, so but the big one, I think that's the two that are the most exciting are the girls varsity indoor track team for winning the 2023 SMAA Girls Indoor Track Championship, and the boys varsity track team for winning the Class A Boys State Indoor Track Championship. Nice job. So we'll take these over there. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
And that's it for our presentations tonight. I just want to thank everybody for coming, and I think that you heard about some of the accolades. It's nice to win, certainly, but I think what you also heard are concepts around education-based athletics, which are most important to us. And we also, along with some of these accolades that you heard about with our students, our coaches also received those. Our girls indoor track coach was the SMA Coach of the Year this year as well, and some of the other coaches. I had mentioned previously during the fall season that Coach Vayu had won the National Federation of High Schools Coach of the Year award for track and field as well, which qualifies him for a position in United States Coach of the Year for high school track and field. So great accomplishments by all of our coaches and student athletes and our club activities as well. And we certainly wish Vex Robotics great work in the national championship, which is quite an honor to be able to participate in. I had the opportunity this year to attend the Vex Robotics, which was the first one I've been able to attend, and it's quite an operation to see all that in action. It's really wonderful. Questions about anything or?
Any questions?
I'd like to make a comment. All of this is so impressive. I'm impressed by everyone here, and it's even more so because when I graduated from Scarborough just a few years ago, we didn't have a hockey program, we didn't have a swing program, we didn't have wrestling, we didn't have robotics. There's so many things that we didn't have. We had track, and we were state champs then too. Just saying. I was on that team. But it's just amazing to see it all happen, because Scarborough we were Class B, we were a small town, and it's crazy. And so congratulations to all of you. I think it's awesome.
Just a quick observation. I'm just so impressed by all the young folks out here and the teamwork. And we spent a whole hour before you all came in learning about social emotional learning, and we just heard an entire presentation of it in action. So when we're discussing the real world implications of some of the educational concepts, you really take it onto the field, and where you're winning, even if you're not winning the games or that matches, you're winning at life, really, in action. And those lessons are going to serve you so well, and you do our schools so proud.
I would just like to echo what Freyla said. We did just spend an hour learning about social emotional learning and really emotional intelligence and the lessons that you learn, not only math, science, social studies, all your core classes, but the stuff you learn through leadership development and having caring for each other and being a good teammate and you know, still striving with adversity when you face hard times and being able to still press forward, going and volunteering when your day doesn't go the way you thought it would. These are huge life lessons, and you should all be so proud of yourselves. We are all very, very proud of you. So thank you for coming. This is one of the highlights. I say this, I love this meeting more than anything. And thank you so much for coming and being a part of this with us. And congratulations again to everybody. Did nobody want to stay for the budget presentation? Nobody?
Yeah, so.
All right, agenda item 9.0 is FY 24 school budget presentation. So at this time, I'll invite Kate Bolton, the Director of Business and Finance. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I did not. No, it's not your time yet. I apologize. Agenda item 8.0 is the K-5 2023-2024 calendar update, appointment only days review. So at this time, I will invite Anne up to the front.
Good evening, everybody. I am Ann Lovejoy, not Kelly Crosby, who is not slated to be here. So don't want to insult her and pretend like I am her because I am not. We just wanted to cover briefly the K-5 appointment days that happen at the beginning of the school year. Some of you have been here for a long time and remember those K-2 appointment times that we've had in the past. And then COVID came along and we weren't allowed to be anywhere but under 10 feet apart. And then last year we finally got back to being able to bring parents and kids into the building. So we went back to our appointment days, and 3-5 wanted to start their year off in a really solid way. Again, following the social emotional learning that we've been talking about all evening, by building relationships and starting those relationships right right off the bat, from the minute students walk into the door for the first time with their parents. So briefly, the K-2 appointment days have long been an opportunity for parents to come in, meet the teacher, see the room, have a little tour of, flushing the toilet, which can be scary for 5-year-olds for the first time. And where am I going to hang up my coat? And where do I put my lunch? And all those things that little kids don't really have a concept of what that's going to be like. So it's a perfect way to start their year off with meeting the teacher one-on-one and having the parent be able to meet the teacher and visualize where their child is all day. And I think it just sets the tone right off the bat as the positive team that we want to be with parents. 3-5, we also have had some, at K-2, we've also done some assessments at that time. Now, it's not hard to do reading assessments with 5- and 6-year-olds because they don't read a whole lot. So it doesn't take a lot of time. But at 3-5, it's very different idea because they read a whole lot more. And so to do a running record at the beginning of the year, which every teacher is required to do for every student, can take up to an hour for a 3rd through 5th grader. So being able to find the time in your schedule when you have all your other students there and all the other things of the day going on can be really challenging, and it can take up to 6 weeks for teachers to get through their whole caseload, their whole class list in these assessments, and then be able to start planning their instructions. So having these appointment times for 3-5 is vital for them to be able to jumpstart that learning process, because they can at least get some of them done and start forming their reading groups with kids and start forming their instructional team so that they can start teaching much more quickly than they have in the past. A couple of the differences between K-2 and 3-5 as well is we would have individual appointments over the years, and 3-5 didn't have enough time in their day to have individual appointments with all their kids, so they would have small groups. And they would have 6 to 8 kids in each small group. So maybe on a Wednesday morning, they'd have a group of kids and they would have a team player with them, another teacher with them, another professional from the building with them, and they could divide and conquer, so they could do some assessments and then also have tours of the school and have kids meet each other and be able to start making friendships, because especially in 3rd grade, they're meeting people from all over town. So it's, it can be a really scary moment. So to have a familiar face from the very beginning is nice. They also, Wentworth also was able to have several different ways that parents could do this. So they could drop and go, so they could drop their kids off at school and not stay for the appointment. They could drop meet and greet, so they could bring their child to school, meet the teacher, and then leave and come back in a couple of hours. Or they could meet, park, and stay. So they could come in, meet the teacher, and stay in the cafeteria or somewhere else where they could just be a part of the school and see what was going on and be close by. So Wentworth really did a really good job of having this variety of ways that parents could participate depending on their work schedules and their other needs. One thing I think K-5 would like to do next year is to make sure parents, and Shannon, you mentioned this the other night, make sure that parents have a little bit more say-so and a little bit earlier time frame of when those appointments will be. So I know Wentworth is looking to use Conference Manager to have parents sign up for those times ahead of time, so they can have control over which day and what time of day they can have their appointment. So it makes their planning of that week of school starting a lot easier, working around work schedules and other kids and things like that. At K2, we've always assigned parents the times, and we've always been really careful with siblings to match them and make them work and not have families coming and going in multiple times in one day or over 2 days. And I know Wentworth did the same thing, so we'll continue to do that. I think K2 will also try to have parents have more ownership of that time frame and that appointment time and be able to sign up online. We haven't worked out all the details yet, but we're working on it. So we really feel like this is the right way to start school for kids at this age level in particular. We think it gives everybody the right start together as a team, so the teacher and the parent and the student can all see everybody together. We're all talking, we all know who each other are, we're all on the same page, and we're all there to support the student. And I think it's just an incredibly valuable gift to be able to start school slowly like that and build those relationships and build confidence and connection with kiddos right away before everybody's coming into a class with 18 to 24 students all at once and trying to get everything done with the whole group. So I don't know if you have any questions, but we hope to continue to do that in the future. And I think, again, it's going back to what K2 has been doing for a long time. And I think 3-5 is really, really appreciated being able to do that this year and like to continue to do that. So I hope I did Kelly Crosby justice and all the notes she wrote me. And I'm happy to answer any questions, and I'm sure other people can jump in as well.
Great, thank you. Do we have any questions?
I don't have a question. I just wanted to add on, because I was the one that requested that you guys come and explain this, because you guys did such a beautiful job explaining it last year, why it's important for this age group specifically to get this appointment time. Yeah, that's the biggest complaint right now is, can the parents find out earlier? Because working that out is difficult. I want to say that I appreciate that you guys can do this ahead of time. I know you guys are swamped with a lot of children, especially in the beginning of the year, and with staffing always being an issue. Having to pull you guys out in order to do some of these assessments can actually really mess up a day for an individual child and losing out on instructional time. So we'd much rather have all the staff and teachers available in the classroom as much as possible, instead of having to pull them out to do assessments that might take 6 weeks to finish at the end of it. So thank you.
Thank you, Jenna. thank you also for thinking outside the box with the conference manager and just trying to make this a more inclusive process for the parents so that they have more involvement as well. So thank you for that too. Did you have a question, Joanne?
No, I didn't have a question. I was going to say the same thing. It was important for me. We hear a lot of feedback and it was important to hear that. I think it's always good to have that information. I'm impressed that since we talked about it, you guys went into action and were looking for ways to problem solve this. And I'm always just impressed. So I wonder if maybe you could put a blurb when you do send out this information about what you're doing, because as much as we'd like it, I don't think everybody's watching tonight. But thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, now agenda item 9.0, the FY 24 school budget presentation. So now I will invite Kate Bolton, the Director of Business and Finance.
Hi, folks. My ego's been crushed like twice tonight because first all the kids left, and then Jillian said everyone wasn't watching, and I'm just like, that's okay.
You're doing great.
Oddly enough, I know that my part of this evening is not the most exciting part. It was so much fun seeing the kids. So tonight I get to talk to you about the budget, which is super exciting for me because I love talking about the budget. It may be a little less exciting for the board because they've already spent 7 hours this week getting information about the school budget proposal, the Leadership Council's proposal. But because this is our first public meeting and our first reading of the budget for the board, we do want to go through a few of the details, and we've got a few slides I'm going to take you through fairly quickly. The objective of this evening is for the Leadership Council to essentially make a handoff to the school board. The Leadership Council has put together a budget proposal. The board now picks that up and takes it forward through the town school budget process that goes on for many weeks. The town school budget, the combined municipal budget, will be presented by Jeff and the town manager, Tom Hall, on March 29th. And then once the town and the school budgets are both out, then the finance committee goes to work for the town and the school. The Leadership Council continues their work. Items in motion, we call them, are things that are changing between first and second reading. Adjustments will be made. The school board finance committee and communications committee are a big piece of this because it's our job to continue to dig into the details of the budget and make refinements, but also to communicate out to the public. Until the point where we get to second reading and the opportunity for the whole community to weigh in when we have the budget referendum in June. So my first pitch tonight is about the school department's budget page, and the link is up here. And once these slides are posted tonight, I believe those links stay live when we put the slide decks up on the school board's meeting page. So this is a place where the community can go for all kinds of useful budget information. Right now, posted on the website, we have what we call the budget book, which is our big presentation of both an executive summary, top level, quick, I believe it's only 10 pages, description of what's actually in the budget and why. But there's also department reports. Each school and department have their pages in that book. There are some really cool stories. There are some pictures of kids doing fun things. It's a neat resource. So anybody who's interested in learning about the budget, already posted on our website, we have the budget book. We have a bunch of appendixes that include a lot of details. And depending on your level of time and interest in this process, you can go to the executive summary and read 10 pages, or you can dive real deep and read all kinds of important things. The appendix, in fact, includes our updated enrollment study, so you can go 143 pages in if you really want to. All right, so now we're going to talk a little bit about budget cost drivers. 80.1% of our FY24 budget proposal is made up of personnel costs, so that's salaries and benefits, which lets you know that there's not a lot of what we would call discretionary spending. When you think about school, you think about books and supplies and turning the lights on and having buses, but really it's our people that our budget is all about. We are a personnel heavy business. And the reason that we're successful is because we have amazing human beings, and their salaries and benefits are really what drives our budget. We have collective bargaining agreements for almost all of our staff. And we have health insurance rates going up this year. We don't know exactly what our increase is going to be, and we won't know that for a few more weeks, but we're estimating that increase at 8%, which is based on an average of the 5 most recent years. And we also have Maine PERS contributions. That's the retirement system for teachers and instructional staff in schools, public schools in Maine. They've also increased their rates and are for every dollar that we pay a teaching staff person, we make a contribution to Maine PERS. So these are some of our major cost drivers in the budget. Other cost drivers, this is going to sound really familiar to some of the folks in this room, but some of the factors that are impacting increases in our budget are the fact that we have federal grants that we've had for the past 3 years, COVID relief funds for the most part, that are going to be done with this year. And so next year, we are going to pick up some of those costs in our operating budget that's supported through local funds. Our enrollment has come back big time from our little dip that we saw during COVID, and it's projected to grow pretty exponentially over the next few years. So that's a factor. I won't even say the word social emotional, except I just did, because we have heard so much about that, and it's so critically important. And we definitely know that some of our investments this year are going to be in that area, as well as learning gaps. Some of our investments this year that are new or added are about helping kids get back some of the missed opportunities that they had during hybrid and during COVID years. Labor market, also a big topic. We need to have competitive salaries and benefits because the labor market right now is very difficult. Everybody who is trying to hire people, any business right now, is facing difficulty with labor. So the fact that our personnel costs are increasing is actually kind of a good thing, because it means that our collective bargaining agreements are striving to be competitive, that salaries and benefits are designed to be competitive, and that we're going to be able to fill some of those open positions. And then inflation is the last bullet, and I don't really need to explain that to anybody. Items in motion, which is a phrase we use for the things that happen between first and second reading. So first reading is tonight. Second reading isn't until May, and the referendum is in June. So there's a lot that happens between first and second reading. First reading kind of puts the proposal on the table with the information that we have today, and then we refine it throughout the process. I mentioned Anthem health insurance rates. We're going to know more about Anthem the first week of April. We'll actually get our actual rates, so we'll be able to adjust numbers from with real information. Delta Dental usually comes in at the same point. Other insurance premiums, I have a meeting with our insurance brokers next week, and we're going to be talking about some of these other coverages that we have. And then you heard earlier that Monique is going to be refining some numbers on the SEL curriculum. That sort of thing is happening all across our budget, where folks are getting new quotes and finding out more specifically what our costs are going to be. For special education costs, our special education department continues to work with incoming students, continues to get enrollment updates, and continues to work through the needs of individual students that we know are going to be joining us next year. And then debt service is the last bullet, and that's a number that comes from the town finance office and is also refined as we go through the process. So what's in the FY24 budget? My first slide is that the FY24 school operating budget starts out by reducing FY23 funding. And this is a little bit of a sore point for me. I shouldn't say that, but there's a perception sometimes with some of the citizens that I talk to that we just take our FY23 budget and we add 5% or we add 10%. We actually go through, the leadership team goes through every single line item that isn't a person. I go through all of those. We have just under 700 line items in our budget, and we literally sit down and go through every last one to figure out, is there any way that we can reduce some of our expenses from FY23? Because we know we're going to have increases in salaries and benefits. So this calls out just a handful of the areas where we did make reductions before we started thinking about what we were going to need to add. If you look at our line items, those 700 line items, and if you're one of those people who sort of likes to sort things and look at the bottom line, I'll send it to you in Excel and you can sort it, and you'll find that there's actually almost $800,000 of individual reductions, little bits and pieces here throughout those 700 accounts. So it's not just take this year, add a few bucks and move it to next year. We're really being as thoughtful as we can about that. So the next slides, though, we're going to talk about what we're adding. When we talk about the budget that the Leadership Council tackles in the first place, we call it level services. That's the budget that we need, the amount of money that we need to do exactly what we're doing right now with next year's costs or estimate of next year's costs. The next two slides talk about added funding, so over and above what's in our FY23 budget. If you want to, flip back to that one. Thank you. So in FY24, we are going to add funding to our local budget to retain some of the grant funded positions that we have this year. Not all of them, but some of them. And this is a step down. We mentioned this the other day, a step down from 2 years ago when we had a whole bunch of federally grant funded positions. When we were coming back into in-person learning, we were adding teacher positions, we were adding support positions to make sure that our kids could actually succeed coming back in from the hybrid year. And so we retained some of those positions this year. Next year, we're going to retain a few of those positions as well. And then in terms of new proposals, we have a process for vetting new proposals in the Leadership Council, and it's fairly formal. We ask our leadership team members to bring to the table actual written proposals and basically make a pitch, explain why they need something that isn't already in their budget. And then as a team, as a K-12 team, we go through and we prioritize those budget items. And I mean, basically it's like a point system. We're going through and we're actually ranking and prioritizing. And we're supposed to be wearing our K-12 hats when we do that, right? So we're supposed to be thinking, okay, I'm a K-2 principal and I know that I need this thing, but now I have to think like I'm the superintendent and I'm going to pretend that now I have to listen to high school and I have to listen to middle school and I have to think about, you know, what's the big story here. We had 27 K-12 K-12 proposals. Wow, that'd be cool. No wonder those budget numbers are so high. We had 27 proposals, new proposals put on the table. And we whittled that down to 12, which were added into the budget proposal that you're voting on tonight. And these are the items, these new proposals are the items that were actually brought forward by the full team with everybody's support. You can see that a number of them are for special education, which is obviously, you know, it's a mandate, it's a sacred trust, it's a moral imperative, it's all these things. Second is access and inclusion for English language learners, because we've heard a lot in the past few days about how many new folks we've got coming into the Scarborough schools who need support with language, who are not native English speakers. And then the third piece, literacy support and learning gaps. Again, a little bit of a reflection on our recovery from the pandemic environment and adding some supports for folks above and beyond what the children are receiving in the classroom. So to fill some of those gaps. The last new proposal is sort of an interesting one this year. We have a very long history of shared services with the town of Scarborough. Our IT team is a town school department. Our buses are repaired by the by Public Works Department. We have any number of collaborations that we do with the town. One of them is with Community Services, who takes care of a great deal of our outside facilities. The field maintenance is handled by Community Services. And so we worked this year with the Community Services Director and the Director of Athletics and Jeff and the town manager to try and talk about maybe adding some staffing to that department. And could the school department also benefit from that? And could the school department also budget some funds to help out with that? The second bullet here talks about a vehicle for the middle school resource officer. And we've already partnered with the town to get a dedicated vehicle for the high school resource officer. And this is an extension of that same mentality. You'll see that tonight's budget proposal doesn't actually include this amount because it's a little bit, like I said, it's a little bit awkward because it's not our budget, it's the town's budget. The town will be, town departments will be proposing this in their budgets. But we are putting our full support behind these ideas. And as we go through the process, the town will include it in their numbers and calculate it all in. And once we get to second reading, we'll know whether those proposals have been accepted by the town and we can include them in our budget for second reading. So here you have a summary of the three major funds. The general fund operating budget is the K-12 budget that we vote on at the school referendum. And obviously, as you can see from the numbers, the big piece here, the other two funds that impact the tax rate and the tax request to the town are the adult education budget and the school nutrition budget. On this chart, you'll see that the general fund operating budget is up 6.23% on expenditures. And that's just basically 1 percentage point off from where it was last year. So our expenditures have increased about the same as they did between FY22 and FY23. The adult education budget is down a smidge, school nutrition budget is up, but school nutrition revenues are also up. So this year, again, for the second year in a row, we're not asking for any tax funding for school nutrition. The difference down at the bottom where it says non-tax revenues is that we are not really receiving much of an increase in non-tax revenues. Last year, our non-tax revenues were up almost $600,000 because we added fund balance and we had an increase in subsidy. This year, we have a very small increase in non-tax revenues because our state subsidy is now actually reduced and we don't have any more fund balance to throw towards revenue. So our 6.47% total education budget increase is going to translate to a higher increase in our ask for taxes. And this is a point where I usually say that the school budget tax request does not equal the increase in your tax rate or your tax bill. All y'all who live in Scarborough, these are not the same things. The tax request for the school is going to be combined with the municipal budget. The capital budget also has an impact, but the school school department doesn't really decide where those funds come from, so we're waiting on the town to lay out those numbers. There's also a calculation around valuation because valuation of the town goes up a little bit every year. So this is all going to be put into a great big spreadsheet by my friend Ruth Porter, who's probably sitting upstairs working on it right now. And when we have the town presentation, then we'll see the actual projected impact on the tax rate. What else we got? Capital. So we have the capital budget. I haven't really talked about so much. It is going to be something that we vote on tonight. We don't have a revenue number for the capital budget just because that's going to come from the town, but we do have the expenditures. The big cost driver in our capital budget, CIP stands for Capital Improvement Projects. You know how we love acronyms. The big cost driver is our Unified Primary School Building Project. And right now we're using 137.5 million as our estimated cost based on Harriman's original estimates that they gave to us last year to put into our 5-year budget. And there is an enormous amount of work going on right now, and we're hopeful that we'll be able to update that cost as well as share all the details about what that actually means. What are we purchasing with that money? Details about the project should be available as we move through the budget process and can be part of sort of a parallel conversation. So our capital equipment budget is pretty stable at 793,883. Big driver in that is 3 school buses. We try to get 3 school buses every year. We have a fleet of 30 and they have about a 10-year lifespan. So that's our standard ask. And then the capital projects budget is actually, I mean, if we look at our budget compared with capital budgets of prior years, without the building project, it's pretty much the same as it generally is every year. And again, we'll have funding sources coming from the town finance, and funding for capital budgets can be bonding, which is borrowing money, which is where debt service comes from. It can be appropriated, which means tax dollars, which means we collect taxes and it doesn't impact the tax request. It can be reserve funds. We have a capital reserve fund now that we use, and the town also has capital reserves. So we'll wait and see a little bit more about where the funding sources will be from. And this is a little box that tells you all the different pieces of the budget and what the board is going to be voting on this evening. And I think my buddy Carolyn is going to be reading the motion. But we can kind of close it out here with any questions on the actual numbers and content. I can't imagine you have any questions, but maybe you've thought of some.
Thank you, Kate. Are there any questions for Kate? Any comments? I know we've spent.
We're stunned.
To your point, we were so involved in the first meeting, it actually went.
We never went home.
Yeah, so
Yes.
we've all spent a good amount of time diving into this. So I am really appreciative of the board and the leadership team that's been with us for this week. I know it's a lot, and we really appreciate all of you. So thank you.
Of course, we want you to know things. There are a couple more slides, and it's more promotion. I'm still pitching. Next steps, want people to stay involved. So when you're looking at this slide deck, because I know everybody at home is they just can't wait to get hold of this. It's got all your dates on it. And then on the next slide, it's got links to the budget, school budget portal. And there's also a town budget portal as well, which will include the whole municipal budget, including the school department stuff folded in there. But if you want details about the school, it's all there on the page, and we're all here waiting to answer questions and excited to talk about this stuff.
I have one small question. Would you mind just explaining for those
in the audience, perhaps, the state subsidy, the decrease that you mentioned.
Hmm.
Would you mind just explaining that a little more so that?
Sure. So the one big revenue source that school departments have that isn't taxes is state subsidy. It's called GPA, General Purpose Aid. And it's part of the big pot of education funds that are made available by the legislature of the state of Maine each year. And it's a good that you brought that up because I think it was a question that came up at one of our workshops. There have been a lot of statements made by the governor's office and the legislature that we're really excited that schools, public schools in Maine are now being funded at the 55% rate, which was written into statute actually about 15 years ago, and was never actually achieved until the governor's budget of the biennial two years ago. The fact that education in the state of Maine is being funded at 55% of the cost of public education does not mean that Scarborough gets 55% of our budget dollars from the state of Maine. What it means is that overall, all districts, school districts in the state of Maine, and the value of education as calculated by the state for all of those school districts, there's 55% of that dollar amount available to be apportioned out to every individual school district. Every individual school district receives a portion of that money based on need, and the need is calculated based on the valuation of the property in that town. So for example, if you live in a very small town up in the county, the proportion of your school budget that is paid for by state subsidy is probably going to be a whole heck of a lot higher than it's going to be if you are in a wealthier coastal community. And it's all about ability to pay. The idea behind it is an equity idea. The idea is that if your town is able to, through their taxes, support a fine school system, then that's great. And the town that really can't afford to have a great school system, their children also deserve to have a good education. So that's, you know, the concept behind it is that. But the concept that we would receive 55% of our school budget from the state of Maine, that unfortunately, that's not the case. We're going to receive about 7% in FY24. We're receiving about 8% this year of our school budget.
Thank you. That's very helpful explanation. I know it's hard.
Wait,
It's hard to
where's my
hear.
55%? Yeah, it's a great idea. If they wanted to fund 100%, we might get a little more, but yeah.
Can I just chime in on one thing?
Absolutely, please.
Okay, first, I just want to say thank you to you and the team. You guys did an amazing job putting everything together. And as one of those crotchety taxpayers are like, but it was interesting to participate and hear, you know, because you hear about those grants and like in my crotchety taxpayer mindset, I'm thinking, okay, you know, the grants are going to go away, so you should expect to take them out. But it was really interesting to sit through the meetings and hear about the long lasting need, especially for COVID and the impact that it's had on the children, and then the needs of the teachers to support them as we're still recovering.
Yeah.
Feels like it should be done and over.
Right.
but
And
it's
that's the
not.
thing, right? So often we have
It's
that.
interesting to hear that.
We have that. Yep, we're done. We're good. We're good. And you know, I saw just recently with the SNAP program that what we call food stamps. And, you know, those benefits were increased dramatically during COVID. And now it's like, okay, we're done. Everybody's fine now. And now we've got people lining up at food pantries because they're not fine yet. And, you know, it's definitely tough. Because a ton of money was poured into Scarborough and other communities. And, you know, it's hard to fall off that cliff and to retain what you need. Yeah.
and maybe that's a good plug for our website, for the materials on the website, both of the presentations that you mentioned that were so helpful for you are uploaded to the website for viewing for anybody to.
Oh, right. Yeah. So the slide deck's on the budget page, but the meetings are actually recorded and the workshop meetings. And if you have the time and energy to sit through the workshops, I mean, you could take it in sections, right? We always chunk things in education, so take a 5-minute break, right? But yeah, that would definitely be cool. And also, Shannon, on the budget page, there's the webmaster built a little drop down, so the FY23 budget materials are all still up there. And there's a huge sort of, I guess you'd call it almost a spreadsheet of all of the federal grants that we received during COVID, when they came, what they were for, how they were used, when they went away. So that's kind of an interesting history as well.
Perfect. Thank you. Are there any other?
I just wanted to add real quick that I think we bring up a good point that yes, it's time consuming to go back and look at those meetings. And yes, it was a big investment of our time to go do that, but very similar to Carolyn, it's so easy to look at a number and go, wow, that's big, right? Like, no, I don't want that, right? As a taxpayer, but listening to what that impact is, what that tangible, what the effect is of taking something away or putting something in place, I think is very powerful. And I think as a community should be worth our time. I don't expect everybody, I have high hopes. It'd be great, to go watch all of those videos. But I do think that if there's somebody out there that has this dire concern that they feel like, for whatever reason, the school isn't prioritizing things, the district, or, we have this big school coming, so why should money be allocated in a certain way? I honestly think it was very well discussed and very well explained. I think we had a ton of really good questions for all of the administrators, and I appreciate, their honesty and transparency. And I think it does show how well they know their individual schools, but then the students and the teachers in those buildings. And it shows that we are a living, breathing entity here. And I just hope that, in mentioning that we have videos up there, that some people will actually take the time to view them, because there's a lot of power in watching that, I think.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I mean, I said this yesterday, it's always such a great opportunity for me because you guys hear me talk all the time. And I love it when my colleagues will sit and tell me what's really going on. I took 3 pages of notes and I work with these guys. So it is a really great opportunity if you have the time. Yeah.
Are there any other questions? All right. Thank you so much, Kate.
Thank you.
All right. Agenda item 10.0 is new business. 10.1 is the first reading of the FY24 school budget. So I'm going to turn this to Carolyn to read to us.
All right. Well, my buddy Kate gave me what to read, so thank you, Kate. So move approval to adopt the Leadership Council's budget proposal as presented for first reading. Total general fund operating budget is proposed at $62,466,220, with offsetting non-tax revenues of $6,720,994 and a tax request to the town of $55,745,226. Total adult education budget is proposed at $183,391 with offsetting non-tax revenues of $110,738 and a tax request to the town of $72,653. Total school nutrition budget is proposed at $2,327,692 with offsetting non-tax revenues of $2,327,692 and no tax requests to the town. Capital equipment proposed budget is $793,883 and capital projects proposed budget is $139,662,700 for a total capital budget of $140,456,583. The end.
Wonderful job. Do I have a motion to approve the First reading of the school department FY 24 budget is presented.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? We are all here, all in favor? Oh,
Oh.
do you have a question? No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that, I mean, these line items, shrunk down to this amount. There was so much great information that we learned, but learning the benefit, this little amount of $72,000 for adult ed, that gives back to the community so much, and the nutrition budget that they were also working to feed homeless people and not asking for, they're not receiving tax dollars, and also providing education to some students in culinary education, like giving back even more to the school system and the community. And then all of the really great things that were happening to preserve these schools, and I mean, the highly skilled, Todd and his crew, the amount of thinking that goes on to try to save money in the long run. I mean, those are all huge benefits, and these numbers could certainly be larger if we didn't have the skill that we have. But I mean, the amount of work that went into this presentation was excellent, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jillian. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor? And it is unanimous. Thank you. All right. Agenda item 10.2 is the second reading of the 2023-2024 school calendar. So for this, I will turn it over to Freyla.
Thank you, Shannon. So the policy committee had the opportunity to discuss the 23-24 calendar. You've already had it. It looks very much the same. We did one motion to change something that you learned about last time, which was move one of the half days off a testing week up one that was in October. But that with that, it is virtually the same, and it looks largely the same as this year. The only other discussion that goes along with this is the what to do with snow days, which is very apt this week as we continue to rack them up. So this year, as everyone is very painfully aware, we have had a number of snow days that has pushed us from the traditional end of the week on the 14th, 15th, 16th into the next week, traditionally. One of the things that this board needs to decide is there going to be a change in policy? In prior years, there was a policy that a certain number of snow days would be traditional snow days, which would be no school, and lots of shoveling. Then after a certain preset number of days, we would turn into something else. We can call them remote days. There's a lot of terms floating around, but the idea would be in some way the time would be made up at home that would otherwise be spent on a non-educational day, and that would count as a school day. And I think everyone acknowledges the remote day is not the same hour for hour instruction that a traditional in-house school day. That's an impossible thing to recreate. But what it would do, it would give a defined end of the year calendar date for sure. So it'd be kind of a drop dead date. And it would allow for planning purposes for both staff and for parents and for children to the extent that they're planning the end of their year that way. And it would also allow us to make up some of those days without seniors not attending at the end of the year. There's an attendance issue at the end of the year. Once you get into the June 20th, June 21st, July 4th. At some point, we don't want to come back to school. And I'm being a little facetious because there are mechanisms to control for that. But what the proposal from the policy board this year was to go back to last year's model, which with this calendar would be go to the end of the year Friday. And just pull up that date right in front of me. And that calendar is really hard for me to read.
Friday
that side.
the 14th.
It's the, yeah, I'm getting there.
Three snow days.
Yeah, so it'd be 3 snow days. The last day of school would be on the would be June 11th. There would be 3 traditional snow days built in the calendar. So if we use them, the 12th, 13th, and 14th would then be extended. But the 14th would be the last day of school. If there were any more snow days, any additional snow days would be a remote day at home.
Thank you for that, Brayla. So first, do I have a motion to approve the second reading of the 2023-2024 school calendar?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? All right, really quick, just thought maybe, Jeff, if you wouldn't mind sharing with, the community, some of the thought process that has gone into this. I know you've done in the past, we did the survey of students and staff and parents. And that was very much all across the board, very much highly in support of doing this. But really just some of the work that the leadership team is doing to develop plans at the different levels.
Right.
this?
So and the idea again behind it, like the big picture of it is, you know, anytime we have a snow day or a weather related closure, it's a disruption, right? And so it's non-consecutive, it's not planned for. You find out that morning, or once this year you found out the night before. So anyway, it creates a very difficult situation. Like, we've learned how to do remote days or try to maximize the technology. The problem is doing that without any real opportunity to plan for it. And then having those days be non-consecutive, there almost always are. And like, I can think of very few instances of having 2 snow days consecutively. So it's really the lesser of 2 evils, right? And so if you have no expectation of work getting done during a weather related closure, and that happens 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, in this case, where we are now, that inherently is disruptive. So having that expectation of a remote asynchronous day, I mean, we have had, I feel like more often than in the last few years, we've had weather related closures too, that have also resulted in loss of power and all those kind of things. So making sure that we have work that's thoughtfully prepared for kids to do in a more self-directed way is the best in developing that. And it's different whether you're K-2, 3 to 5, basically starting in 5th grade on up through 12th grade. Our kids and staff can collaborate on Google Classroom, which is a great way to connect online to get work done during these remote days that we've designed and thoughtfully done so with attendance checks and those kind of things, all the way up through the different grades. So, I mean, that's really the idea behind it. And then obviously the other benefit is we do have a hard end date, where we know, as you get further into June, there are all kinds of things that are starting up between camps, between other arrangements and summer work and that kind of thing. So, and also trying to jive with the town too, or around summer programming. So having that hard date is super helpful. Just shared experience of we'll have, and this will probably happen this year, projecting out some of those last days in June that we're tacking on, attendance can get very low. And then also, depending on the weather, I mean, anytime things get over 80 degrees, people are not as focused as maybe a little cranky it is. Then they are typically the farther you get into June. So that's just human nature, I suppose. But I mean, that's the thought process behind it. There are a lot of other towns that have gone to a similar methodology of having, a standard snow day for X number and then going to remote learning. So makes sense.
Yeah, thank you very much. Are there any other questions?
I think we've had a lot of community concerns emailed to us about this issue, so I think it's important to acknowledge that. But in one of the comments that really struck me as a new way to look at this was in the current climate that we live in and we work in as adults, one of the things we've had to adapt to is working at home and then coming back in the office and kind of bouncing around. And that is a skill. I'm not sure at kindergarten level, we're teaching that skill quite as intensely, but certainly for our older children, I think there is actually some value in a day where you're required to adapt to a new learning environment. Again, it's always preferable to have kids in the classroom. It's not something that we would create or engineer, but I think we can take advantage of some natural learning opportunities and some skill building that folks will use as they move into the job market.
Yeah, and I think for me, like one of the things when I'm balancing this and you think about in school days and the importance of them, I think everybody up here would say in school days are the best to have, but the reality is there is learning loss when there's snow days. They are not in school, and us tacking those on at the end of the school year, first off, our seniors aren't attending. So that's an entire class that is out of days, out of learning opportunities because they don't attend those days, right? And then on top of that, you have absenteeism at very high numbers. I feel like, and maybe I don't want to misquote, but I feel like it was up to the 50s% of our students missing school. And so you've got large swaths of kids that aren't receiving days anyway, right? And so you're really looking at is a remote day in lieu of a snow day, a better option than tacking the days on at the end. And that's really what you're deciding between, not really deciding between this and an in-person day, right? It's like one, it's the two.
Yeah,
two extremes.
and as Freyla mentioned out of the gate, I mean, that's a no-brainer. I mean, a full in-person day when we don't close, I mean, is so much more valuable than a remote day, which is one of the reasons why you hold on and hope that you don't have to close.
Right.
In the first place.
One of the questions that was asked prior to this was about special services, and I wanted you to maybe touch on that a little bit, like how are those students, you know, if that's a school day, which, you know, we all know, I mean, I totally get it. It's not the exact same as a school day. But how, like, if there's a kid with 100 minutes of speech therapy or occupational therapy, are those minutes able to be moved to other days for that kid, or is that in fact a loss for those kids?
Yeah, I mean, students with specialized learning on a remote day, you know, certainly our staff will be involved in making sure that the work that's being prepared for students for those days is modified as much as it can be. It's not going to be ideal. And if there's direct service, obviously, that a child receives, they're not going to be receiving that on a remote learning day. So, you know, we do the best you can, as our teachers always do, you know, in times where there's any kind of disruption. Probably the best I can answer that. Yeah. Again, it's not ideal. You're choosing between, you know, the lesser of two, you know, imperfect days, I guess.
Yes, and I acknowledge that it's like probably 2 days a year, so.
Yeah. And of course, we're going to pass this and next year we'll hit 3 and then that'll be it.
Yeah.
So, I'm predicting it already. Yeah, that should be great.
First year we.
Yeah, that's what happened last year. And of course, this year, the year we don't have it, that's when we're going to go to July. Murphy's Law.
All right, is there any more discussion?
I just want to add, as a student, I think all of us instinctually just want to say no remote days and just have those days off. But then I think especially as we saw with these snow days, most teachers are kind of left scrambling a little bit with AP exams. Like we only have this set amount of time before we have the exam. And so I think all of the snow days pretty much have fallen on red days. So all of my red day classes are like, oh no, we only have like 9 classes before the AP exam. And so senior or not, you're still getting so much less time learning. And it is in the end helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you, Julia.
As much as I would love to have less.
Thank you.
You just know that there's not a lot of seniors listening right now, so you're safe.
All right, so all in favor of approving the second reading of the 2023-2024 school calendar as presented? No, we already made them. Yeah. We are unanimous. Thank you. All right, the agenda item 10.3 is the meeting minutes of March 2nd, 2023. Do I have a motion to approve them as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, all in favor? Perfect, thank you, it's unanimous. Agenda item 10.4 is a motion to approve the revised protocols of the February 16th, 2023 school board workshop. So really quickly, I just want to explain why we're doing this here. I inadvertently when I put the language of our protocol up on the slide deck yesterday, or not yesterday, last meeting, 2 weeks ago. I inadvertently put the old language and not the new language. And I did not realize that until thankfully Kelly caught it when she was updating the website. So, I just wanted to bring this back and make sure that we actually voted on what we wrote. So here is the updated protocol number 13. It says, we agree the committee chairs will act in good faith to schedule meetings which can be attended by the full committee and relevant staff. Committee chairs are responsible for providing agendas at least 3 business days prior to the meeting and meeting minutes within 1 week of the meeting. All committee meetings will be recorded and or live streamed whenever possible. So do I have a motion to approve the revised protocol as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Is this the last time? No,
Yeah.
just kidding.
It pains nobody more than me than to do this. I think I literally slapped my forehead when I saw Kelly's email. So yes, I apologize deeply for this. I know we had a lot of robust conversation around this. I'm very sorry. All right, all in favor? Thank you, it's unanimous.
I'm just going with it.
I'm sorry, did I miss? Oh, hold on. So let me start again. I think I missed one. All in favor? Okay, all opposed. Thank you. Thank you for catching that. All right, agenda item 10.5 is a motion to approve the Maine Environmental Education Association grant for Wentworth School.
Yeah, so I got a email from Gwen Cesare, our third grade teacher, a little bit, just to give a little more information on this. So this funding is $1,500 and the funding is intended to be used for outdoor educational purposes. She's been awarded the grant to support our unit on life cycles, animal adaptations, and wetlands. The grant will go to providing resources to support students learning about wetlands such as binoculars, microscopes, field maps, etc. The grant will provide funding to bring in experts from the Maine Audubon Society into Wentworth to teach us about animal life cycles and adaptations, specifically to the Scarborough Marsh. Some of the funds may also be used to support a field trip to the marsh at the end of May. Those details are still getting worked out. So pretty cool.
That's very cool. Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve the Maine Environmental Education Association grant as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? I'll just say thank you so much. It sounds like an amazing opportunity. All in favor? Perfect, we're unanimous. Thank you. Agenda item. Huh? Oh, gosh, I'm like, Lord. Agenda item 11.0 is adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
I'd like to discuss why we're still here.
Well, all right, all in favor? Yes, we're all unanimous. Thank you.